Hi everyone, my name is Riyum and I would like to welcome everyone to this online class. We're going to learn about what is screen printing and what is the industry all about. We're also going to learn what kind of machine, accessories, equipments, inks and chemicals are there for you to help in printing the right output. This course is meant for two types of individuals. If you are going to start your own clothing brand, then this course will help you along. And if you already have a clothing brand and you want to print by yourself, facing all those difficulties and finding the right vendor, well, this course is also for you. And for those who have your own customization business, you're struggling to get to the perfection of how to print professionally and you are not able to meet the demands of some of your customers, then this course is also for you. Without further delay, let's start with our lesson 1. So, what is screen printing? Screen printing is a method to transfer ink onto any surface like fabric, paper, wood, metal, and many other substances. We use a mesh which is stretched to a frame, mainly made of aluminium, wood, or metal to do the job. With the right skills and techniques, you can screen print any image that you can possibly think of. There are so many things you can do with screen printing. Most of the people around the world, they would start their own clothing brand, or if they have a business, they would provide custom printing services. And I've seen many people apart from this, mostly the artists, they would use screen printing techniques to create art, and they would print posters, bags, branding collaterals, and so many other unique prints to show their creativity. So it's really up to you how you take this skill set and you want to do a business out of it. And there is so much of possibilities. The market opportunity is huge. So as long as you have the creativity and the right business model, I think there are so many things you can do with screen printing. Stages in screen printing. So for general understanding, this class is all about knowing the workflow in screen printing. The entire screen printing workflow is divided into 3 stages. Stage 1 is the pre-production. Stage 2 is production, and stage 3 is called the post-production. In the pre-production stage, it all starts with a design. It can be a very basic design to a very complex or multicolor artwork. And then we do the color separation using softwares like Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, or CorelDRAW, and sometimes a dedicated software for color separations. Once the color separation is done, we print out the artwork from a printer using a film positive, and then we coat the screens with emulsions and let it dry. Once the screen is dried, we expose the screen using an exposer unit. And then once the screen is exposed, we take it to the washout booth to wash the design with water and let it dry. So this is the entire steps in pre-production stage. I would say out of 100%, 70% of the work is done in pre-production, and it is one of the most important stage. The next stage is called production stage. So in this stage, what happened is, first we tape up all the pinholes in the screen and all the gaps in all the corners of the screens. We apply adhesive gum in the pallets of your screen printing machines so that the fabric can stick and we can print on top of it. And then we mix the colors according to the design. We do a test print and then run the full production. After the production or during the production, we need to cure the ink. So we use a special machine to cure the ink. And finally, we fold and pack. Once everything goes well in pre-production stage, I think the production stage is the most fun part. So the next stage is called post-production stage. In this stage, we clean the inks from the screen. We also clean the palettes, and whatever dirty parts are there, we start cleaning it. And then we take the screen to the washout booth again to reclaim the screens so that we can use for the next design or for next print job. So this is the entire workflow in screen printing. Many people miss out in small tiny little details in some of the parts, and that's where you can see the difference between a local prints and professional prints. I hope that now you have a clear idea what are the stages in screen printing. The next class will give you even more detailed idea of all the machines, equipments, and necessaries you will need for each stages. So now, since we have an idea about the screen printing workflow and the stages from start to finish, let us now see what kind of machines, equipments, accessories, inks, and chemicals you'll be needing it to get started. First of all, let's see what kind of machines and equipments you'll be needing it. You'll definitely need a laptop or a desktop. You'll need an inkjet printer. You'll also need an exposer unit, whether a professional one or a DIY one. You'll also need a screen stretcher. You'll also need a screen printing machine, whether it's a line table machine or the carousel system. And then you're gonna need a flash dryer or a heat gun. You'll also need a heat press or a conveyor dryer. And then optional, you need some pressure washer and then washout boot. When you're going to start screen printing, we have to do some color separations and do some editings on the designs and everything. For that reason, we need the laptop. In that laptop, you must have at least Photoshop or an optional Adobe Illustrator in your system so that we can edit the image, we can do color separations. You're gonna need a inkjet printer. In screen printing industry, professionally we use an inkjet printer because the ink inside the inkjet printer is more black than a laser printer, and we use a special film to print out. That's why we need an inkjet printer. Well, for starter, if you don't have any printer, and I would strongly recommend if you can get a printer, probably or preferably a A3 size, A3 plus size printer, which you can get it from the market, or if not, an A4 inkjet printer. I would recommend the A3 plus size, which will give you 13 by 19 inches, the maximum sizes, which is good enough size for printing any t-shirt. So there are some optionals, or you can say a budget printer available in this category. You can get from Canon, Pixma, IX6770, and then they have the 6870, and also they have some newer versions. You can check it out in their website. What are the options available in this 13 by 19 inch category? So I would highly recommend, if you don't have a large budget, then definitely go and get this, I would say, the starter printer. And then you can also look out for options from Epson as well. They've got L1300, L1800, and lots of new models as well for the 13 and 19 inch printer, which is a A3 plus size printer. And if you have budget, definitely you can go for the 24-inch printer. Here you can print like all over prints on your t-shirts. And if you want like your bigger prints, then you can use a 24-inch, so it will be helpful for that. And also you can print all kinds of print size like, A4, A3, A3 plus, and then you also have the big sizes as well. So check out the best that suits you currently, and but do get a printer. If you already have a printer, then of course you can ignore this part. But in the future, if you want to upgrade, then you can always come back to this lesson and check out which are the options that I have just mentioned. So moving up, we have got the exposure unit. So the exposure unit is very important. To expose the screen, we need a light source, and we are trying to kind of imitate the UV rays from the sunlight, and but we are doing it in a very controlled environment. That's why UV light works best for exposing our screens. If you are not able to afford at the moment when you're starting out a professional exposure unit, you can do some DIY. If you can build one by yourself, that will be good enough. Okay, this will help you to get started, at least for the printing, and this will work for any kind of solid spot color vector designs, whether it's a single color or a multicolor. You'll be able to expose using the DIY exposure unit. However, when it comes to detailed designs or very complex artworks, then you will definitely need a professional exposure unit, especially the UV exposure unit. So I would definitely recommend you to go and get, or if you have the budget, go and get one professional exposure unit. If you are already using some kind of DIY exposure unit, and if you have a budget, then also I strongly recommend you to go and invest one in the professional one. It will really make a world of a difference in the final print output, and also you'll have a smooth workflow. I know there are a lot of videos available online where you can see people doing or making a lot of DIY exposure unit, but like I said, it will work to a certain level. But when you are looking for a professional touch, when you are looking to provide some professional service, then definitely there will be some difference. The professional exposure unit, usually it comes in various light sources. I would say the main thing is the light source, and you have the basic exposure unit with UV light source. It's the basic starter professional exposure unit, I would say. And then you have the exposure unit with UV light, but then it has got a lid or a cover on top of it. That also, if you can invest, that is a good one, so that you can avoid putting all those weight on top, and this will give you an ease of doing work. And after that, you have got the exposure unit with UV light, but then with a vacuum. So the vacuum role is to minimize the gap between the screen and the glass, we don't need any gap between the screen and the glass. So that is why we use a vacuum, so that there is no gap at all, so that the light hits only the design part, and that is bare minimum requirement for exposure unit. So next we have a screen stretching machine. Well, this machine is one of the most ignored machine, I would say, by many people. I've seen in YouTube a lot of people trying to do the DIY version, with hand stretching and stuff like that. But I have to be very honest here, and with the experience, I'm telling you, those doesn't work. Please don't mind. But this is my experience, and with experience, I'm speaking. The DIY hand stretching, with all the nails and stuff, it doesn't stretch that perfectly, okay? We need a very good stretch screens so that we can print a very crisp and sharp image. And also when you are doing multicolored printing, then we definitely need all our screens to align together, which we term as registrations. So if you do not have a very good stretch screens, registrations will be off no matter how you want to fix that. Definitely, I would recommend, if you can, at least go and get a manual stretching machine that is good enough to get started professionally. And then when you have money, you can, or when you have capital, you can always invest on the pneumatic screen stretching machine. So in screen printing, there are two types of screen printing machine. The most common one is the carousel one. Some call it the round, some call it butterfly, some call it the rotary screen printing because it moves round. So it comes with a manual one and also an automatic versions. And then we have got the line table machines, which you have seen me doing all my work in that system. So the manual carousel or the butterfly or the rotary screen printing machine. So this method is widely popular in small print shops and mid-sized companies. And in this system, the machine starts with a single station color machine, and then 4 color single station, 6 color 6 station, 8 color 8 station, and so on and on. So if you're going to start screen printing in this method, or if you're going to use this method, then I would highly recommend you to invest at least on the 6 station 6 color, because we will need at least 6 colors later on in the advanced classes that we're going to cover. And probably if you can get a micro registration, that will be great. Otherwise, 8 station 8 color is the best to invest, because sometimes there are some artwork which requires 8 colors to print to achieve that highly realistic image. So if you only have 6 station, you will be in big trouble. You might need to invest on another machines. So machines you can't buy every day, right? Those are expensive machines. So when you are going to invest on the right machines. So next up is the line table machine. I think most of you have seen me doing all the print jobs in this method. This line table, it also comes in 2 ways. One is the table sets. So we have got the tables, we line up the tables, and then we do the screen printing method. And also we have the rotary line table. That means just like the carousel one, it moves around, but the method is in line table, which means we have got the 3-pin registration system. So this method of screen printing is widely popular in countries like India, China, Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, and also Japan, South America. A lot of South Americans print in this method, especially from Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Venezuela. So, it's widely popular. It doesn't matter which country you are from. Process is similar. Everything, the skill set, the techniques are all same, but just the workflow is a little different in these two methods of screen printing machines. But in line table method, even if you start screen printing with just a single station, you'll be able to print multiple colors of layers or screens. So we'll see more in details in the practical sessions. But if you have options to buy or purchase a single station line table machine, and if you're starting out, just go and grab that. It will be very handy for you. Okay, so the next one is the ink curing machine. So this is also very important. So for ink curing, we first need to, during the production, when we run different screens of colors in the design, let's say we have got 4 color design and we have 4 screens. During the rotations, during the prints, we need to temporarily dry the inks. The reason is that so that we can load the second color and print on top of it. Okay, this usually happens in Plastisol ink, but for water-based ink, usually we sometimes print wet on wet, and sometimes we dry and then we print. For that reason, we need a flash dryer. So flash dryer is the professional one. But if you are not able to afford in the beginning the flash dryer, then obviously you can use heat gun. And you'll be seeing me using heat gun throughout this entire course. And then of course you need our ink, when it's printed, when it's done, we need to cure the ink permanently so that it doesn't wash out when we, send it to laundry, or, it doesn't crack, all those things. So we need a heating machine for that. So usually for starting out, you can use heat press, or if not, the professional one or the industry standard is the conveyor dryer. So the conveyor dryer will increase the production rate and it is more professional. But in the beginning, you can still avoid that and use a heat press to cure the ink. Okay, so accessories, you'll need these 7 items. One is screens, frames, obviously, and along with that, the mesh as well. We're going to talk about the mesh later in the class. And then you're going to need a squeegee, and then you'll need a spatula. Spatula comes in 2 sizes. 1 inch and 2 inch, sometimes 2.5 inch. The difference is that the 1 inch one is to stir the ink and scoop out the ink from the container to the screen, and the 2 inch and the 2.5 inch is to scoop out ink and put it back to the ink container. So that's the only job. And then you need a scoop coater so that you can coat the emulsions in the screen. And then you need a transparency film positive. Here we recommend this. We don't want you to compromise on the quality of the print. So if you're thinking to use a butter paper or tracing paper, I would not recommend that because they will not give you the right quality. So at least go and get a transparency film positive. And then if you're using a heat press, then you'll need a matte or gloss finish heat paper fusing paper so that your quality of the print is, you can either keep it to matte or either keep it to gloss. And of course you need some duct tapes to fill up all the gaps and tape up all the corners of frames and stuffs like that. So these are the 7 accessories. In the beginning you'll be needing it. So as you grow, you might want to increase the number of squeegees, frames, and other things as well. So even the frame size as well. Usually we recommend you to go and get the 18 by 24 size. This frame size will help you to print A3 plus size, A3 size, and also A4 size. So basically there are 2 types of inks for garment screen printing, and everything evolves around that. So we have got plastisol ink, the most commonly used ink throughout the world, and also water-based ink. So both inks are very common within the t-shirt or garment screen printing industry. People all over the world will use either one of that or both sometimes. Plastisol inks are basically PVC inks. For water-based ink, usually it is eco-friendly. A lot of big brands, they use water-based ink only specifically because of the eco-friendly thing. And this ink is little aggressive. It's not as easy to handle as the plastisol ink. So if you are planning to print all your merchandise or all your garments, t-shirts and hoodies with only water-based, I would suggest you to start with plastisol inks, get used to the workflow of screen printing, and then you shift to water-based. Alright, so next up is what colors you should keep in your stock. Definitely get some white. If possible, get more whites, because when we are trying to mix colors, you will need more white for mixing colors. So get more whites if possible. And then you get the black, golden yellow, lemon yellow, dark green, parrot green, light blue, dark or navy blue, royal blue, red, cyan, and magenta. So this will complete the entire, I would say, the color set to make any kind of custom colors. So next is chemicals. Basically, you will need 5 kinds of chemicals. This is a must, I would say, okay? A lot of people ignore some of the chemicals, but it is one of the most essential part in maintaining a good screen. Number 1, of course, is the emulsions. Next one is the reducer. If you're using a plastisol ink, then you'll need this. It is for cleaning the ink from the screens. And then you'll need, again, this is called the plastisol reducer. If you're using plastisol ink, then you will need this chemical, because sometimes certain colors in plastisol are very thick, and this plastisol reducer helps to make the overall ink a little bit thinner. And then we have got the screen stripper. Screen stripper is about removing the emulsions from the screens so that we can reclaim or reuse the screen for our next design. Okay, as simple as that. And then the next one is mesh prep. Okay, a lot of people don't use this, especially like I said in the small shops and small print shops and all, but this is very important. Okay? It's the maintenance part so that your screen lasts longer. So I would suggest these 5 chemicals. Make sure to get that: emulsion reducer, plastisol reducer, screen stripper, and mesh prep.
Okay, so mesh is basically nothing but the fabric that we use in the screen. So in the earlier days when screen printing started, people used to use silk, the fabric made out of silk. That's why sometimes screen printing is also known as silk screen printing. But nowadays in modern times, we use polyester, a very fine polyester to make the screens. Okay, so mesh is nothing but crossing of threads per square inch. It's like when you weave the cloth, so that intersection between the mesh is called the mesh count, right? So if I know you can't see even if you zoom in, but there are threads crossing to each other. So those crossing lines in between, right? So that is known as the mesh count. That means the higher mesh count, the lesser the opening, lesser the mesh count, higher opening. So it's a vice versa, okay? So when and where do you use these different types of mesh count is all depend upon the design, okay? For example, this design, if you can see, this is a solid color and it's a solid vector color or a spot color. So this kind of design or designs like, a name, letters, numbers, or sometimes you have a very big artwork, just a single color, or multiple colors as well. So during those time, you use a lower mesh count so that the ink can pass through the screen easily. Otherwise, if you use a higher mesh count, it will be very tough to pass the ink through the mesh into the garment. So that's why we use a lower mesh count. Higher mesh counts usually we use for halftone printing or very fine details. Sometimes we even use for the pocket printing. We have these small, very tiny little letters that we use. For that, we use a higher mesh count. Alright, so lower mesh count in t-shirt printing, we use 140 mesh count. In India, we go by numbers. So in India, we call 50 number or 50 number. So if you're from India, go and buy the 50 number mesh count in polyester for garment or 140 mesh count if you're from other parts of the world, okay? So you need to only keep, for now, you only need to keep the 140 mesh count for any kind of vector artwork, solid or spot, okay? And for halftone printing, you go and get the 200 mesh count, or in India, we call it number 80. You can get number 80 or 200 mesh count. So you just need to keep only these two for now, okay? Later on, you can experiment once you get the flow of it, once you understand what is this and what is that. That time you can go and experiment on different mesh. But for now, we are only going to use these two mesh count, which is more than enough. Okay, so the polyester mesh comes in two colors, white and yellow, okay? The yellow one looks something like this. And of course, the white one you have already seen. So what is the difference between these two, okay? If I go by definition, the white mesh has more light refraction than the dyed mesh, which is the yellow mesh, meaning light will scatter when it is passing through the mesh and you'll be able to get more light into the frame. This mesh, the white mesh, which is something like this one. So the white mesh is more suitable for printing vector artworks, solid colors like this, names, numbers. And sometimes, when you have a large printing, only solid colors, then white mesh will work wonders because here you can get the low mesh count. But if you're talking about those halftone printings and some detail artwork, I would definitely recommend the yellow one. This comes in the higher mesh count. The white one also you get in higher mesh count, but for some reason the dyed yellow one, this one, it gives better results because it has less light refractions. So it gives you fine details in the printing, like the sharp edges, crisp printing, and also resulting in capturing a true image. So whenever you are printing any halftone or any design that has halftones, try to use the yellow mesh, which will give you better result overall. Okay, these are generally a little bit expensive than the white mesh, but if you can, go and use the yellow mesh for any half. All right. Okay, so now that we have understood a lot of the things like stages in screen printing, all the machines, the equipments, inks and chemicals that you need, now it's time to go to the next lesson, which is about printing. This is the most exciting part, right? You've all been waiting this. So in the next lesson, we are going to see from start to finish. We'll not learn how to design because this course is not about that. This course is about screen printing. So we'll have a design and we're going to do color separations and all the steps that I just mentioned earlier, and we'll see what are the things we will do. We'll discuss a lot of things in the next class. So see you all in the next class.